You're listening to TG1F, an F1 podcast with Kate and Nicole.
We're your hosts. I'm Kate.
And I'm Nicole.
And this is our show where, you know what? Let's do something a little different.
Welcome to TG1F's Read an F1 Romance Novel Month.
F1 romance, author interviews, book recommendations, oh my.
Join us for a month-long celebration of F1 romance authors and the stories that get our hearts racing.
Because while F1 drivers are filling their shelves with trophies, we're filling yours with F1 romance novels.
Who are we talking to today, Kate?
Turn the page and find out. Welcome to the show, Paige Toon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We are so excited to chat with you today, and I just kind of want to get right into it. So can you give us a little bit of a synopsis of your F1 novel, Chasing Daisy? You know, the themes, the plot, the characters, if there's any spice level, kind of anything a reader would need to know to hit download or purchase on the book.
Sure. Well, my character, Daisy, she goes to work for a Formula One team at the beginning of the novel. And she's supposed to be a hospitality girl, but she soon gets the job to look after the two drivers. And she has an immediate crush on one of them, but he has a girlfriend, this childhood sweetheart of his, but there is chemistry between them. And then there's another guy, this Brazilian driver, who she has like immediate kind of, it's like enemies, enemies to lovers kind of going on with those two. So it's not a love triangle as such, because there's, a few things that happen throughout the novel, but, it's all around the world. It's obviously set within Formula One. It's a really realistic, I think, behind the scenes look at the racing scene and what it's like to work as a hospitality girl there. There's not, like the spice level it's pretty closed door. And yeah, that's pretty much the crux of it. But yeah, this chemistry between her and Luis, this Brazilian driver, is pretty hot.
I love that. So several reviews of Chasing Daisy said readers loved the book so much that they read it several times. So what does it mean to you that your readers keep coming back to this story that you wrote?
Oh, it makes me really happy. I mean, I pour my heart and soul into every single book that I write. I feel it all when I'm writing. And, there are moments in this which take you on a real roller coaster. So I know that that's how my readers felt when they were reading it. You will feel everything from, chemistry and joy and grief and, like just so many different emotions. And I think that's what my readers like about my books. It's the fact that I connect so deeply to the emotions and therefore they do. And you're inside the head of the character, Daisy. So you're literally living, along with her, like living vicariously as she goes to work and goes traveling all around the world and has this friend who has a secret as well. So it's just a really fun escapist read. And obviously she's working for these two completely hot drivers. So, what's not to love?
What's not to love? Were you, what's kind of like your favorite part of the book, favorite aspect of this storyline?
I love like Luis and Daisy, like they have a real kind of banter thing going on, which starts off very much as enemies. The opening of the book, she's riding her scooter, going to get some snack food, and this guy in a Ferrari almost crashes into her, and she swears at him, and she knows swear words in a lot of different languages, and he sort of swears back at her in Brazilian. And I think there's this moment when they're in this bar in Monaco and they're like trying to learn and sort of teaching each other different swear words and stuff, and that's quite fun. And that's kind of the first moment that she realizes that maybe she might like him a little bit more than she thought, because for her, it's all about Will, this British racing driver. Like she just has such a crush on him. But yeah, I mean, I love writing the romantic scenes are always my favorite.
The unexpected love interest. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so how long have you been a fan of Formula One, and what was your journey into kind of being a part of this world that you've now written a book about?
I was born into it. My dad used to be a Formula One racing driver. So, yeah. So
well, there you go.
He raced in IndyCar and he raced in sports car as well. But he was in Formula One. We've always gone to the British Grand Prix and sometimes the Australian. I think the moment that I really, really got into it, like even though I was a kid, I was a kid sort of going around and watching my dad like win races and stuff, and that was really fun. But the moment that I properly got into it was when I went to the Australian Grand Prix with my dad. I was taking a year out and he introduced me to Ayrton Senna. And I think like
Wow.
that, that sort of direct kind of relationship, or that, direct sort of contact with racing drivers and stuff, just elevated it to a different level. To know someone
Wow.
personally like Senna was just incredible. And we've met, loads of racing drivers over the years. We always go to the British Grand Prix, and, my dad
Mhm.
BRDC, and so we'll camp within the racetrack, actually at the farm campsite. And like you'll always be saying hello to Danny Ricciardo, and we were there when they interviewed Lando Norris and George Russell for the first time before they went into Formula One. They were just like,
Wow.
and so to sort of see them as young kids, them going into Formula One, and still seeing them getting interviewed, every year and stuff. It's really nice. It's a really intimate kind of setting. So yeah, so I have been a race fan for a very, very long time. So I'm writing quite a lot of this from experience of kind of being there.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say,
Wow.
you have all of this lifelong experience, and you've clearly been around tracks for a very long time. Was there anyone who you kind of pulled inspiration from for this story that you've met throughout the years?
Not massively, no. I mean, there are things that happen in this which are inspired by real things. There is a crash that happens in this which is inspired by a crash that I watched my dad have when I was a child. I remember watching it on television. It was in America, I think, Arizona. And I just remember sort of seeing this crash, and then the TV camera just cutting to an advert break. And it was a really, really bad crash. I mean, he said, he at that moment he knew, like he knew with certainty that he was going to die. Like his, steering had locked, his brake had locked, it was just going straight towards a concrete wall. And I wrote that into the scene, with Will tells Daisy about this moment where he was completely convinced he was going to die.
Mhm.
So it's that, that real danger element, I think, it's the
Yeah.
idea of, that's what I was attracted to about the idea of this story. I wanted to write a book where, you're falling in love with someone who could die, with the job that they're doing.
Mhm.
Just, it's really dangerous and really high stress and high, adrenaline. And Daisy really feels that, like she has a bit of a panic, like at a certain point, where she sort of realizes that she can barely sort of stand to watch what's happening up on the screen. And I mean, for her, there's another added thing that I found really interesting is the fact that like she's traveling around the world with both of these drivers, and Will clearly isn't necessarily kind of really deeply in love with his girlfriend. He's, they've been childhood sweethearts, have been around for a long time, and it's like the media has kind of built them up into something that they aren't necessarily are. But the moment for Daisy is, when she and Will are getting closer, they're watching a race, and she sees Laura, his girlfriend, standing inside the box, like sort of watching Will's
Mhm.
race. And I think it's that element of her sort of feeling like she really knew him and really kind of connected to him, but then realizing that his girlfriend has this other sort of connection to him that she can never sort of touch, never sort of get close to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, that's so not special, but like you are you are coming into this world with a perspective that I think a lot of other authors don't necessarily have, right? Like you're a lot of the authors we've spoken to are fans of the sport, and even if they've been in it a long time, they'll never have this experience of like writing from a very personal point of view when it comes to racing. So I can understand why people said that they love the book so much that they read it several times. So I will probably be joining that list when I get my hands on it.
Cool. I mean,
Yeah, I loved the reviews where people are like, "This is the most realistic Formula One book that I've ever read," and I think that is obviously true because you were able to pull actual stories and real lived experiences, which I think is really special and is going to make people when they're reading really feel like they are fully immersed and part of this world. Was there a moment that you've been around the sport for a long time, and you travel with your dad and you've heard all these stories, you met Art Senna, which is incredible. Was there a moment that you were like, I need to put this in a book, or like I had these characters in my brain, I think Formula One is the sport for this? Like, what was that moment of being like, I'm gonna write a book about the sport that I've grown up loving?
it was the moment. I think I'd written a couple of books. This was the third book that I'd written, and I think it was just that, not remembering the crash and remembering what my dad said about it, and then just thinking about the danger element, and knowing what it would be like to sort of fall in love with someone who really is putting their life at risk. So that was kind of like the real moment for me. And yeah, and I mean, just what you were saying a little while earlier, just to sort of add to that, have a friend who works in Formula One, and we actually met through her reading this book. And she works for the Williams Formula One team, and she's told me that a lot of the presenters behind the scenes have read this book too, and they all say that it's the most realistic Formula One romance.
Wow.
So I'm super happy about that. But yeah, no, I'm just really inspired by, I love an impossible love story, and this is very much a forbidden love story too. It's a, enemies to friends, sort of enemies to lovers, like love story as well.
Mhm.
There are two different love stories going on here. And something, like I say, something really kind of powerful that happens about halfway through, which I think sort of pulls a rug out a little bit from beneath readers' feet to get them to, maybe change their perspective.
Wow.
That's
And speaking
incredible.
of that, so there's a couple different kind of tropes going on in this book. Do you have a favorite trope to write? And, on the other side, is there a trope that you haven't written that you really love that you think you'd like to kind of get your hands dirty with at some point?
Yeah, I've actually, the next trope that I'm going to write, which I'm starting writing this book in September, is fake dating. I've never done like a fake dating kind of book, so I think that'll be really fun. And I mean, my favorite, and this trope is you find this throughout all of my books. It's an impossible love story. Like I love love stories that feel really impossible, a bit of forbidden love. Some sort of thing which keeps the characters apart. Like I love finding
Mhm.
ways to keep my characters apart. And then, all the chemistry that kind of comes with that. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are my favorites for sure.
That's so exciting. Is your next book that you're writing a follow-up to Chasing Daisy?
No, it's not. No,
Okay.
I've written like a mini sequel to Chasing Daisy, which you can find if you sign up to my at my website. I've got an email newsletter called The Hidden Page, and I sometimes write little
So
sequels.
good.
Or, yeah, and mini sequels, which I didn't ever want to charge people for. And there is a little mini sequel to Chasing Daisy on The Hidden Page. So if you sign up at paigetoon.com, then you can read like a little mini sequel. And sometimes my characters appear in other books. Um,
Oh, I love that. I
Fun.
love that so much.
well,
I
the
love I love when authors create their own little multiverse and you'll like kind of see different pieces of different characters. It's like such like a fun like Easter egg for
Yeah,
people that have read all your books. I love that.
the readers call it the
So
Tooniverse.
yeah.
Universe. That's brilliant.
I
That's
love it.
brilliant.
So if your next book is not a follow-up to Chasing Daisy, do you have any more plans to write other F1 books, or are we expanding outside of F1?
I've just written so many different books now,
Yeah.
and every time it's usually a new idea, just something else that interests me that comes along, some sort of twist that I want to write into a story. So most of my books are completely standalone, and certainly my last couple, like Severed Summers and Only Love Can Hurt, like,
Mhm.
are real standalones. And yeah, my next one, which is called What If I Never Get Over You, which comes out next year, has the most fun twist I've ever written in any novel ever. So
Ooh.
I love.
Oh,
Oh.
That's not to say that I won't write another Formula One book, because clearly I've got quite a lot of material, and it's such a thing now. I kind of like, I don't know if Chasing Daisy was the original. Like, whose is the first? Like, for
I know, that's such a good question.
I know.
We need to put together a timeline of all
Um,
of the released books and that we can find, because I know we just talked to Kay Bromberg recently, and she had put out a book in like 2018.
Mhm.
But she said that was about IndyCar. So it wasn't even F1 at the time. So I'm really curious.
Chasing Daisy is 2009. So just saying.
I
So there you
feel
go.
like you may
You
be the first one. I feel like you
yeah.
may have been
Well,
the
Chasing
trend.
Daisy
So
so old that there are a couple of references in there which are now incorrect. So just the scoring system back in the day, it used to be 10 points, not 25. So
so
that's completely different.
So people that read it now take that with a great. Don't go in and say they said this was the most realistic, but the scoring system is wrong. It was right.
At the time that I wrote it, they were just
Yeah.
about to take the Silverstone Grand Prix away from Silverstone and moving it to Brands Hatch. And so I wrote that into the book because also my dad knows Bernie Ecclestone, who used to run
yeah.
F1.
Yeah.
And so I had like all the insider information about what was happening with the tracks. And then of course they ended up staying at staying at
Oh my
Silverstone.
gosh.
So since the book was written in 2009, like what was it like to release that book, maybe to an audience that people were not as, familiar, especially in American culture, with this sport? And then, did you wake up one day and all of a sudden Chasing Daisy was just doing numbers again? And you were like, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah, do you know what? I haven't even properly looked to see like how many more like copies, because Penguin India ran like a big old thing about it. I saw,
Hmm.
no, it was Vogue, I think Indian Vogue, sort of like put it in this big thing, and I've seen it a couple of times on TikTok. So the sales probably are lifting. I should really go, and I keep meaning for the American cover, like to just sort of redo it. I'm going to repackage it,
Hmm.
put it out in America. But yeah, no, I'm sure maybe at some point with things like this have got to help, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're hoping.
It's having a revival.
That's excellent. I can't tell you how many readers have got in touch with me over the years. I mean, I've like hundreds have told me that this book got them into F1, like well before Netflix
Ah,
came along. So
Yeah.
that's so special.
yeah, it's so cool. Like I'm
It's
so happy with, I love Drive to Survive. I've been completely addicted to it. And it's so nice to see so many more people getting into F1 now, because that was what it was always about for me. Like for me, even when my dad was driving, like, okay, I would know, his co-drivers, and I'd know, the different people from the different teams and stuff. But it wasn't until I, met Ayrton that it started to become personal. And I think that's what makes racing exciting now, is that, you get to know the personalities behind the drivers. Otherwise, they're just like vehicles going around and around a track.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, there's definitely Netflix has been fantastic for that. And it
Yeah,
was,
I think it's interesting that books are almost kind of like your book is like the pre-Drive to Survive, because I think what is it about Drive to Survive that gets people interested? It's the stories behind these characters, and it's being involved, like you said. And I think having a book like Chasing Daisy that you read, or any of these other F1 novels, it's a story about this sport, and I think that just inherently gets people interested and wanting to learn more. And so it's like these books almost act as a kind of Drive to Survive-esque story for people to become interested in.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it was so much fun doing all the research for this one. Like we went to the McLaren Technology Centre, and that was back in the days when Lewis Hamilton was driving for them, and Jensen Button,
Wow.
like that.
Yep.
It was like, yeah, it's cool.
And it's so nice too because, this is, when Drive to Survive came out, we saw a big growth in female fans, right?
Yeah.
And so your book feels like a way for women to also approach the sport for the first time in a way that is relatable to them and get them into a sport that has historically been very male dominated. So I think it's so special that, people have reached out and been like, we love this book and it got us into the sport because it is just such an incredible story. And like you mentioned, like stories are what really hook people and get them attached to things. So I can only imagine how you feel.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's really, really cool.
All right, shifting gears a little bit, no pun intended. We're gonna get into a little rapid fire question segment. So first things first, who is your current favorite driver and team on the grid?
Oh, it's still Lewis Hamilton. Love Lewis Hamilton. And so therefore it's Mercedes, but I'm so excited
I
for
was gonna say, you're gonna switch. You're gonna make the switch.
I'm very sad that Signs is not going to be in red anymore, though, because he looks so nice in red.
He
Hmm.
does.
Told me over the years that if they could picture Louise, it would be Signs. Like he's kind of like. So, yeah, I'm a bit sad about Signs getting pushed out, but I'm very excited for next year. I think it's just going to be such a great season.
Lewis and Ferrari is going to be iconic, and it's something that he needs to finish to round out his career, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and so stepping outside of the F1 world, what is your current favorite or of all time book or series?
Oh, I mean, I'm a big Colleen Hoover fan. I love her books. And Maybe Someday was always my favorite one of hers. I'm also madly into like romantasy, like I love the Akatar series. Like that's and I just
Yeah,
can't wait for the next like the fourth wing, the
yeah,
remember what the new one's called, that is a Black Honks or something, something like that.
yeah.
Onyx Storm,
That's the
I
one.
think. Yeah.
That is a great answer, because I just texted Nicole the other day and I said, "Do you want to know What? I said, we've been asking all these authors what their favorite book or series is, and not one person has said Akatar yet or any Sarah J. Maas books. And I was like, I'm a little disappointed. So thank you for saying that, because I was like waiting for someone to say it. But
Yeah,
it's also our favorite.
I love it. It's because fantasy, like they do, there's always so much more of a way to keep readers, like to keep the characters apart. Like it's not just
Yeah.
girlfriend or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
It's quite literally anything. You
yeah,
could come up with anything you want.
yeah.
Do you think that you would ever write? Do you think you would ever dip your toes into the romantasy world?
I'm not sure. I've got ideas for like dystopian sort of futuristic
Mm-hmm.
love story. But I'd always write love stories. Like that's just my absolute passion. It has to be, yeah, falling in
I
love.
mean, I don't want to. I don't want to read or watch anything that doesn't include some sort of romance.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not for me.
I'm the same. Yeah, I'd so love
Doesn't matter the setting.
that. Right. I just wish so many more books were made into films and Netflix series, because like that is, I would just devour them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's start a petition. Let's get Chasing Daisy optioned at Netflix or Hulu. I think we can make it happen. I would love to see it. All right. Final question. Are you familiar with the concept of the show The Amazing Race?
No.
Okay. So basically, what it is, it's a competition reality TV show. You and two people partner up, and they basically have to travel around the world and compete in competition. So some of it can be like daredevil stuff. Some of it could be, food related. Some of it is like mental challenges, and you have to race from country to country. And at the end, whoever is the last one standing gets $1 million. So that being said, out of all of the characters that you've written, who would you choose to be your partner in The Amazing Race?
I think it would probably be Bridget. Bridget from The Lion
Okay.
of My Heart, because she's really fun, and she's just such a go-getter, and she just, she's great fun, and she's a travel writer, so she'd have like loads of like high tips. Yeah, so I'd probably go for Bridget. She's one of my favorite characters.
That is a perfect choice. Incredible. Well, Paige, thank you so much for joining us on the pod today. We had such a blast chatting with you, learning more about Chasing Daisy and yourself and your incredible life that you've lived. So this is an opportunity. We're rolling out the red carpet, so to say. Tell people where they can find you, what you have coming up, anything that you want to share with the audience. Now's your time.
Oh, thank you. You can find all my books on pagetoon.com. I'm on amazon.com, and I'm on Apple Books. My more recent books are all published by Penguin Random House in the US. So, Seven Summers is my latest one that's out on the shelves at the moment, and that's my most emotional love story that I've ever written. Like that's, if you want to feel quite a lot when you're sitting there on the beach, and that's the one to read. And yeah, I just love to hear from American readers. I'm at Paige Toon Author across all of my social media. Drop me a line, say hello. I'd love to hear from you.
Amazing. Well, again, thank you so much, and it was great chatting with you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So much.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of TG1F, an F1 podcast with Kate and Nicole.
If you like what you heard, don't miss out on the fun between episodes.
Keep up with the chaos on Instagram at 2girls1formula. That's spelled out TWO girls numerical 1 formula.
And check out our website, 2girls1formula.com, to shop cute fan-made F1 merch.
See you next week.
But like we said, in the meantime, we'll see you on the internet.